Welcome to the FactoryStudio training tutorial. In the last few sessions, we have created a new project based upon a trending and alarming template, created tags in an asset structure using tag templates, created device connections to a control logics PLC, and associated tags with PLC addressing quickly using Excel. Now we will quickly build our brewery display making use of those tag templates. Remember, we have 2 brew lines, and within those brew lines we have 4 tanks. Within each tank we have an outlet pump, a supply valve, and sensor data. So let's go ahead and dive in and create our first line 1 display. To create a new display, we'll click on the New Display button. We will set the display name as Brew Line 1. And we'll keep the type at .NET Smart Client. And the Smart Client is a rich .NET client that can be launched with any URL from a browser on the network. Now that we have a new display, let's go ahead and start dropping symbols onto the screen. We'll start with a tank. Drop the tank onto the screen, double click, and here we can set the level indicator for that tank. We'll start typing Brew Line 1, and with the period, the next portion of the asset tree will begin to show. Select Brew Kettle and level. Now we have a tank with the level indication showing directly from the tag. Now we'll go ahead and drop a text box on the screen, and with this text box we'll size it the way we want, a little smaller, and we'll call this temp for temperature. And if I hit Control D, I can duplicate that, put it off to the right slightly. And now, if I double click, I can animate this with a tag. So instead of that temperature string, we'll go ahead and use the ellipsis and browse the object model. So we'll go tag, Brew Line 1, Brew Kettle, and temperature. And for formatting, let's set this at 1 decimal place. And we'll set the max length for 5 characters. Now back on the temperature label, let's go ahead and change the fill to a little bit darker. And let's change the label itself to a little bit more bold. Okay. We can size that a little bit more. And now we have a nicer looking temperature readout. Well, now that we have this, let's select both and hit Control D and duplicate this. Put another one down a little bit, Control D again, and let's add yet another one. For the second one, instead of temperature, we're going to select pH. So let's put the label at pH. And for the indicator itself and that tag, instead of going through the browse again, we can just click the period and select pH. Now we want to make sure that the max length is set correctly and also that the formatting is set correctly as well. Now for the last tag, let's set the label for level. And again, let's go ahead and remove temperature and add level to the tag. Now what I like to do is make sure that these items are aligned properly. And the easiest way to do that would be to group each indicator and select them all. We can align left, and if we want them a little bit closer together, we can use arrow keys and then distribute them vertically. Okay, so now we have our tank and we have 3 indicators. Now let's add another symbol. Let's add the outlet pump to the screen. And let's select, let's see, there's a number of pumps that we can choose. Let's go ahead and select this pump here, add it to the screen, and place it where we want it to be. Now that we have this symbol on the screen, I'm going to go ahead and unmake this symbol. And the reason I want to do that here is to animate this individual piece of the symbol. So let's hit Dynamics and Configure, or we could double click the item. We'll animate fill color and we'll select the tag for outlet pump. Once again, let's go Tag, Brewline 1, Brew Kettle, Outlet Pump, and we'll use the status of this pump to animate it. With a status of 0, we'll go ahead and leave this as a gray color. And with 1, we'll set it to a nice green color. Yeah. Now that we have our pump animated, all we need is a valve. So let's go to Valves. And let's pick valve number 34 here. Drop it at the top, close. Once again, we'll unmake this symbol. And now I can animate any piece that I would like on this valve. I'll just animate the body for now. Config, fill color, and let's select Tag, Brewline 1, Brew Kettle, Supply Valve, and we'll use the status for that one also. Once again for 0, let's go ahead and select a color similar to the valve body, which in this case would be pretty close to white. And of course, for the valve being on, we'll set the green color, hit OK, and now we're done. Now that we've got our first tank built with indicators, pumps, and valves, let's go ahead and run this as a test. And the first thing we'll want to do is save our display. Under the Edit menu, we'll make sure that this display and the startup layout has header, footer, and now our new page, which is Brewline 1. Now that we have our Brewline 1 set as part of the startup layout, we can go to Run, Startup, and Run Startup. You can see that our display now shows our valve, tank, pump, and the indicators. What we can also do with Control-Shift-P is have a look at anything within our project. In the Property Watch, if I select Tag, Brewline 1, and Brew Kettle, I could now set the temperature to, let's say, 88.7. I can set the pH to 7.4. And I can set the level to 50. And additionally, I could go to the outlet pump, change the status to 1, which means that pump is turned on. And for the supply valve status, I could do the same thing. Okay, now we know that our tags are wired up correctly and that all of our indicators are showing what we expected. Now that we've verified our display, let's go back to configure mode. Inside configure mode at the top, we have breadcrumbs, which allows us to quickly get back to our display. Now let's make a few tweaks. Let's shrink this pump up a little bit closer to the size of the valve. And for the level indicator, I can click on this black arrow, select the piece that I want, which in this case is going to be the data link, and let's remove the decimal place. Now that we've done this, let's shrink the screen a little bit, hit save, and what you'll see is that the screen updates immediately with the saving of this picture. Let's use the power of symbols and tag templates to speed up our development. First, let's use the tree view control to see all of the objects on the screen. This will just allow us to more quickly configure each tag. Let's first select the text box next to the temperature indicator. Now we want to change the tag name from tag syntax to symbol syntax. To do that, we'll use pound, we'll put select tank tag and a colon, and now in parentheses we'll select the entire brew kettle tag. We're going to do this for each animation object, and it's real simple. I'm going to select the new syntax that I have, copy it, and I'll quickly replace all of the other animations. Now that I've changed all of the animations, we'll select everything in this tank group, right-click, and we'll make a new symbol. Now, if we remember, in the tank or the tag templates, we have a tag template called tank. Let's make this symbol name tank as well. Because our symbol name is tank and it's the same as a tag template, I can double click this object and simply select the tank tag. But what I can also do is remove this item. Now that we have our tank symbol created, instead of dropping a single tank onto the screen, let's drop an entire line onto the screen. And we can do that using the asset model. We know that brew line 1 and brew line 2 contain 4 different tanks. So if we select just the brew line itself and click OK, we'll see that 4 tanks are dropped onto the screen. And if we double click each one of these tanks, we'll see that the first one is grist mill. Let's move this to the beginning. The second one here is brew kettle. Let's move that right next to it. The one down at the bottom is mash tun. That's next in line. And the top is lauter tun. Let's select all of these tanks, align them at the bottom, and space them horizontally. The one thing we're missing here is a label for each one of these tanks. Let's edit this symbol. Right-click, edit symbol tank, and we'll add a label to this tank. Okay, I've got a label. Let's animate the text output of this label. And we'll animate that with symbol syntax. Select tank tag, tag dot brewline 1 dot brew kettle. And we'll make that with the description of the object itself. And inside the description of each one of these tanks, we have brew kettle, mash tun, lauter tun, and grist mill. So let's click close. Make sure that this size is large enough. And we can go ahead and save the symbol to the symbol library. Let's update tank. And now you'll see, because this symbol is global, it has put that same label on each one of the objects. And when we save this and look at runtime mode, we'll see that each one of these objects is updated with their particular description. Let's go back to configure mode and make some quick adjustments. Now we know that the grist mill didn't exactly have temperature and pH, but only had level. So let's go ahead and unmake this symbol. And now we can change its components. It did not have a temperature, it did not have a pH, but it did have a level. Now let's take a look at that display and make a few changes. If you remember, Control-Shift-P will bring up the property watch. And inside this property watch, you can see that the brew kettle is the only thing that we've actually changed from the earlier exercise. So let's go ahead to the grist mill, and we know that the level can be changed. We'll change this to 75. On the mash tun, we can do the same thing. Let's make a couple changes. Temperature, we'll say it's 101. We'll say pH is probably around 7.2. And the level, again, using percentages, we'll say it's 40% full. And the same thing can be done on the lauter tun. Level, 65%. pH, probably about 7.4 or something similar to that. And the temperature, say the temperature is at 99 degrees. So we've now verified that all objects are tied to their particular data points in the PLC. We can make changes to those data points through the property watch, and our screen is updated properly.
Tatsoft.